my name's Andrea Warmington.
My name is Owen Burns.
And welcome to Silo, the podcast about self-discovery and personal growth and what that means to you.
Today we are on episode 63. And how are you, Andrea?
I'm well, and how are you?
I'm doing well. It's been kind of a rough couple of weeks, with Thanksgiving. It was uneventful. It's looking like Christmas is going to be equally uneventful. I've been distracting myself by teaching myself French. That's the best I can say. How about yourself?
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Beaucoup merci. But anyway, I've been purging. It's the end of the year, and I've been doing some going through my thousands of photos on my phone. And it's interesting. I don't know if you noticed, but your phone kind of aggregates. It kind of aggregates all of the photos, all of the portraits, all of the people who have selfies, and it always makes me think, what's going on? And I was reading that article in the New York Times about fake people, how there's algorithms and AI software that can literally get all thousands of photos and just kind of like put together a person with a nationality or ethnicity or whatever. And it just blows my bloody mind. You know, it really is where technology is going. Like, I could be fake. This may not be me who's talking to you a couple of weeks, months or years from now.
Yeah.
But, anyway, that goes into our guest. I think that this is a great segue into who we're going to talk to today.
We have a guest, Christopher Wells, who created a short film. That's I believe it's under 7 minutes. I think it's 6.5 minutes, and it's a horror film. So let's welcome Chris Wells. How are you doing, Chris?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good. We have a lot to talk to you about today.
Great.
Yeah.
So Chris, I understand you're a director, producer, writer, and the owner of K Pictures.
Yeah. We basically do a lot of different videos for different clients. We also do creative projects. We produced and I directed and wrote a feature film called The Luring, which is out now on different platforms. Yep. And the short film that I'm doing now is a part of a bigger project, a feature film. And so this is a proof of concept, basically, technically, if you want to get technical with it. And basically with this short film, it's to entice other producers, other investors to want to learn more about my feature project and to help me make it.
Yeah.
So tell us about this crazy production, the pre-production of getting this film out there.
Well, I think almost every production, there's always going to be a crazy story, but this one was a little bit more stressful than others because I believe it was September 25th, I learned about a contest that sounded perfect when I saw the video on it. And the next day I was going to get tested for COVID to go see my mom. And I decided that day that I'm going to shoot this film because the night prior I was kind of thinking about it. I'm thinking, well, can I pull this off? Because the deadline of the contest was very, close by. Yes. So I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but after thinking about it overnight and after getting tested, even though I wanted to go see my mom, I thought, this is I have to do this. I have to submit this. And even if I don't win this is going to motivate me to get it. So just under 2 weeks, I was able to get a cast and crew together to shoot this short film. It was a 2-day shoot. And there was just so many things, so many moving parts. And thank God I was able to get Mark as a co-producer because there was no way I'd be able to do it myself. And I don't know how we were able to get it done in such a short period of time because this was a pretty big production. It was, it wasn't like, 2 guys walking in a park. It was, a lot of equipment, I wanted this to look good because again, if it's going to be used for a feature, it has to look at that kind of level. And
right.
So,
well, where did you begin? What was the beginning process? Like, who was your first person to go to?
So for me, I contacted Mary McGloin, who did the casting for The Luring, because I thought, well, I need actors and I need someone to focus on that. So I contacted her and I wanted her to kind of give me words of encouragement also, because I wasn't quite sure if I was going to be able to do this, and like, am I just crazy? So so she basically said, you're crazy and you shouldn't do it because it's the deadline is just too soon. It's impossible, especially if you're going to go with SAG, which that's the avenue that we were going to go with.
Right.
And I didn't listen to her because I was like, you know what, screw it. I just have to do this. And then she said, okay, well, I'll help you. I'll get a cast for you. But she didn't know if we were going to have enough time to with COVID to fill out all the paperwork that SAG needs. Then I needed a DP, a director of photography / cinematographer. So I sent out a blast on some of the film groups that I belong to on Facebook, and some other sites like Mandy.com and another site that I can't think of right now. And then I just kind of like went down the line of like, what do I need? And at that point, I obviously I needed a location, but so I went with a friend of mine, Brian Bergs. He's actually my co-producer for The Luring. I went to him and I said, hey, can I shoot in your apartment? He said, sure. And then when I went there, the DP that I finally ended up hiring saw the photos and said, that's not going to work. I'm thinking, well, we have literally 5 days to shoot. How am I going to get how am I going to get a location and all this other stuff? And at that point, I got Mark involved as the producer. And so he was helping me get all the other things that we needed, like from equipment to everything, you know, from food to, you know, we need chairs and tables for the cast and crew to sit when we're not shooting. I mean, all these like little things you don't even think about. And it just sort of like snowballed and everything sort of fell into place, and it was crazy. Mark and I were pulling our hair out of our heads trying to figure things, you know, are we going to really be able to pull this off? Because again, like everything was, you know, we had to shoot on October 8th and 9th because my editor needed 2 weeks to edit.
I see.
So we were really kind of running against time. And again, thank God things fell into place, but and there's just so many variables that were so many moving parts.
Yeah. It's like putting a puzzle together, but
Yeah.
at the same time, all these moving pieces.
Yeah. Well, Mark, you mentioned Mark. Mark Izoski is our producer for Cylopodcast, just so that our listeners can know who Mark is. But wow, that's amazing. I mean, the producer does a lot of. I mean, in 2 weeks, it's a lot. It seems to me that you're really like scrambling. But when you sent out this email, I mean, this Facebook ask for a DP. I mean, how did you bring everyone? I mean, obviously Mary was working on your casting. What was going on in terms of you have somebody working on your scout for the apartment, but the DP, you need someone to shoot the damn thing behind the camera. I mean, how did that come through? I mean,
so basically, you know, the first things that you need is obviously a location, a DP, a producer. Those are like the three main things that you kind of need right then and there. And so when I got the DP, I sent out the blast, like you said, and I got a lot of people reaching out to me, because the way that you send out a proper blast is that you don't say, and this is what you're going to get paid. I like to describe the project, and I like to say, send me your reel and your rates. That way people feel like, okay, he's willing to pay me what I'm worth. Because once you start saying, well, I'm going to pay you this amount, unfortunately, you're going to get chastised, unless it's a good amount, unless it's a fair rate. But a lot of people, they like to lowball and, you know, just talk to people. Let's see what their rate is and have a conversation. So that got me about 50 DPs sending me their reels. And again, like I really didn't have a lot of time. When I say I had 2 weeks, when Mark got involved, we were shooting that Thursday, and I think I hired him the week before. So it was less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
You know, yeah. And so basically with the DP, I really liked his reel. I liked what he was, his reel really spoke to me in terms of the color, the contrast that I wanted to achieve in my film. And once we said, okay, you're hired, then we're going for the look, like the color tones, the contrast, the feel of the film. And when I sent him the photos of Brian's apartment, Guillermo said, look, that's just not going to work. It's not going to be what you want, what you told me what you wanted.
Why
Yeah,
was
most-
that,
yeah.
why was that, Mark, though? What specifically about a location? Like, I'm just curious why one location works, but then another location won't work.
Well, some of it could just be the technical aspects of it. Is it easy to get to with all this equipment?
Yeah.
And Brian's apartment wasn't the easiest place to get all this equipment into. Also, the ceilings weren't as high as Guillermo would want.
All right.
So Guillermo was like, look, and these are things, it was a 2-day shoot. Guillermo was thinking logistics, how are we going to be able to shoot this, much less just get the look that you want. Now, in terms of the look, Brian's apartment's a really nice apartment, but it's sort of plain. There's no woods or details or craftsmanship. It's kind of like a modern apartment, where this film, it just doesn't call for that. It calls for more of like an older looking apartment, a building. And so
that makes sense.
Yeah. And
sorry to interrupt. One thing that we kind of failed to say is that this is a horror film that you're trying to do. So it's like, it's, I mean, everything is okay. I mean, that's
important.
Well, when you're dealing when you're dealing with horror, for instance, Brian's apartment had a lot of white walls, and Guillermo's like, look, it's just going to be too much bounce. It's just, you want dark walls, textures, with the color palette that we were looking for. Guillermo said, it's going to make his job a lot harder. And why am I hiring such a good DP when the place isn't going to give him
the mood?
The way to do it? Because you can have the greatest DP in the world, if the set design isn't really there, it's just sort of it's not going to work. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So then I had to go get a location scout. And so I reached out to a whole bunch of location scouts, sent out a lot of blasts. No one really replied except for one person. And when I spoke to him, I now only had like 4 days before I was going to shoot. So I'm like, I'm really shitting. And so he said, well, look, I have a place that sounds like it might work for you. And I'm like, yeah, right. Come on. The first place he's going to think about is going to be the one that's going to work for me. This guy's full of shit. And he sent me photos. I'm like, oh my God, this looks great. So I did the location scout. I went there really quickly, pretty much that day, saw it, loved it. And I didn't negotiate a price because I was desperate, but the price seemed fair. And then when it came to signing the contract, which was the day of the shoot, so I'm shitting bricks because nothing's solidified. What if the owner of the place says, you know what, I changed my mind, I don't want to do it anymore? Well, what am I going to do? Sue him? Like, I can't. Like, it's even if I sued him, what am I going to? There's nothing to sue him with. So I don't have a film, and that's what I wanted. So I was like, I'm not going to negotiate with people. I need people on. I need to spend money wisely, not be cheap. And thank God it worked out with the location, because I think it was great. But I did have a set designer, and she did an amazing job. So not only was the actual skeleton and bones of the place good, we were able to accent that and make it look, I thought it came out great.
I mean, Mark, there's other specifics that you were dealing with, like even just parking the truck, equipment, and then the fog machine, and there's so many that we're going to use, and there's so many things that are just moving parts. How did you deal with all that, especially the truck thing? I mean, I found that fascinating.
When you're dealing with a horror film, usually you're thinking at nighttime, and I wrote the script, takes place during the day. And so one of the reasons why I hired Guillermo is because he had films that he shot during the day that looked creepy, that had shadows, contrast, and like a really eerie kind of feel to it. So I'm like, all right, he can do it. He can get a daytime shoot but look creepy. Because when you shoot at nighttime, it's hell. It's, you're shooting from all the way till, like, let's say 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and no one really wants to do that. So, I was like, all right, well, if I can keep it during the day, that's great. So we did, but unfortunately what that does now, when you rent equipment, the rental houses are only open, they start at 9 a.m. Well, we need to start shooting at 9 a.m. So that means you have to get your equipment, get it into a truck, and then you have to park it in a facility that both insurance companies, the insurance company that I hired and the insurance company that the equipment company has, they have to agree to a parking space so they feel good that the equipment won't be stolen. So it can't have 2 points of entry. There's like a long list of things that the parking lot has to have. And
Wow.
so we were like, oh my God, like,
The little things, the
these
little things.
Yeah.
But then, so your AD, so you got the location, you got Guillermo, your DP. How is so you're kind of like halfway there into it, yeah? So how's it seems like you're really getting there, like it's getting smooth. What was the link that held it so that you could shoot it? I mean, is there a link
Well, you brought it up. The AD, the assistant director, that's another person that I forgot to mention, that was a key person that I needed as well. Now, the AD basically takes this, creates the schedule and says, okay, these are the shots that you want to do. So you create a shot list with your DP, your director of photography, and the AD, the assistant director, says, okay, you've got 50 shots, and it makes sense to shoot it in this way, and so they sort of organize it. So if I were to say who is the glue, I'd say the producer and the AD, because the AD keeps you on schedule. And whatever curveball, and believe me, there were curveballs that, we had someone that was kind of late on the second day of shooting, and they were a key person. I don't want to call them out, but then the AD has, okay, this person's 2 hours late. We need them. How are we going to adapt to that? Because we can't run over. Because then you have to pay people overtime and all that kind of stuff. So the AD's basically the glue that's keeping us together on set. And thank God I was able to get a great AD. David was amazing. And he really was a very good motivator, because he was very good at commanding the stage, talking to people. Everyone knew that he's very experienced. And he really kept us on schedule. And Mark did an amazing job. Mark was just the type of producer that I'm not used to working with, because I'm not used to working with people that can actually help me. And Mark was like, don't worry, I'm going to take care of that. What else do I need to do? And he did things without having to ask. And that's great, because that alleviates me. Now I got to take off my producer hat, and I got to put on my director hat, and I got to be creative. I got to make sure that my actors can perform. I got to make sure that the shots are going to look cool. I got to make sure that, at the end of the day, if people don't like the film, then what's the point of all that effort?
Yeah, but question though, you really brought up an interesting point, because you're wearing all these different hats, and as a creative person, you want to look for details. I mean, how do you work in that kind of pressure to be creative? Like, do you thrive off of like all of these? You're spinning all these dishes to kind of like come up with a great 7-minute film. How do you find your creative I mean, how do you even find the space to get to see the film when you produce, direct it?
You don't, because honestly, like, on September 24th, the day before I learned about this contest, I was not planning on doing this. I'm writing a feature film. I wrote a great first scene that could be used as a hook or proof of concept. I wasn't planning on this. So it's really just it all, and I hate this. I hate the stress. Like, I want more time, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I just surrounding yourself with really good people, you can then trust them to take care of things.
Yeah.
So I can then trust Mark to be a producer and take care of those things. He's got his finger on the pulse. My AD was very aware of things. My DP was able to get me some crew people he recommended, which were great. So they worked as an awesome team that has obviously have a history together. But at some point you just have to, and I didn't really have the time to do this, but at some point I just said, okay, I got to turn my phone off, even though I need to make a million calls. I got to rely and trust the people that I've hired, which is surprising because I never met Mark. I never met most of these people before, but I got to trust these people. Mm-hmm. And then just sort of find the time to say, okay, Chris, you have to look at this script and think of the shots and really make sure that this is going to be articulated in a way that it's going to be fun to watch. That people are going to be like, okay, I want to learn more and maybe invest in your feature, or whatever I might need them to do. Because again, there's a difference between a short film and a proof of concept. A short film basically has a beginning, middle, and end, and you're like, okay, the film is done. I don't need to see more of that. A proof of concept has open questions that you're like, well, I want to learn more about that. What does that mean? Like, let me I'm more curious about that, and there's more of a story to that. So that's what, and as a creative person, I have to make sure that that happens. And again, it really happens. Thank God I had really good people around me.
You know, it's kind of like this job is like walking the plank, because if one ball drops, the whole thing doesn't happen. And I never really knew this, you know, about being a director, with that it really is a very risky kind of process.
Yeah.
Right? Which would scare the hell out of me. I mean, I would be popping Xanax like there was no tomorrow. Seriously. There's a funny story that when we talked to you before about the fog machine.
Oh God. Yeah. So basically, when I signed the contract to have the location, I told the location scout, I said, look, you know, not location scout, the whatever, the guy that got the location. I'm drawing a blank right now. I said, look, you know, I can't have the owner here because, you know, we're going to be using a fog machine, and I'm basically, it's like an Airbnb in a sense. Like you're buying that space, renting the space for 2 days. And he said, well, he's going to just come in and out. Like, you know, he might just have to get something. Well, okay. First day that we're shooting, we're using the fog machine, and someone tells us, oh, the owner is really flipping out. And we're like, what do you mean he's flipping out? I didn't even know he was here. And he's like, oh, you know, he's got asthma. He's saying the fog machine is making him cough. And his son is practically dying because of the fog machine. And we're like, what do you, and I'm talking to the you know, location guy, and I'm like saying, but why is he even here? Like, why isn't he, like, what the hell? Turned out that our PA knew him from a bar. And he's like, look, he's a really cool guy. He's just a little eccentric, but let me talk to him. I'm like, okay, great. He comes back downstairs, because at that point we were like, this guy might shut down the shoot, because he's really complaining. Even Mark was like, had his face in his hand. He's like, Chris, I don't know. This guy might rip up your check and say, screw it. And what are you going to do? So I'm like, oh my God. So then Adam, our PA, comes down. He goes, look, I took care of everything. It turns out that it's his son's birthday, or it turns out that it's his birthday, not the son, and he's going to take out his son. And I said, and I gave him $100. I said, have a great birthday, because that $100 was like, don't come back.
Wow.
He didn't come back for that day, and then he never complained about the smoke machine again.
But it seems as though, okay, from these disasters, from the fog machine to the van, it kind of, and on a low budget, it seems like things kind of came together. Would you say? Yeah,
that's amazing. That's why when Mary said again, I'm not trying to throw Mary under the bus, because she's great and she's smart, and she actually gave me good advice, because it was insane to do it in such a short period of time. But I had when you have a feeling that you just got to do something and that nothing's going to deter you, that's what I felt about this. And it just was something that I knew that I had to do. And when I look back at the production and I look at the actual film and the experience, I'm thinking, thank God, because I love the way the film came out. And now all of a sudden, like I'm putting this into festivals. I'm, spending more time on the script. Like, this has now become a real thing. It isn't just something that, like, oh yeah, maybe I'll get back to it. No, now I've got deadlines. Things are kind of rolling. Things are kind of happening in a way. So yeah, I don't know how things fell together, because when we had our PA with the truck to get the equipment, we didn't even have the insurance companies, but for both our insurance companies and the equipment, they haven't agreed to the parking lot yet. So we're thinking, literally our PA is driving to pick up the equipment that we don't even have the rights to get it yet.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were like racing against time, because we needed the equipment the day before, because again, we had to show up on set at 7 a.m. in the morning. So, we had to have it on Wednesday night. Yeah. So it was just, I don't know. Wow. I don't recommend doing it this way to anybody, but
you did it.
Yeah. I don't know how.
But what would you say you learned about this experience? Because yeah, I'm sure you've been doing this for many years as a director, writer, doing your own short films. What have you learned something from this experience?
Well, yeah, I learned a lot. I learned to trust people. I learned that when I was doing The Luring, I had Brian as my co-producer, and I had another producer, Sandy, but they aren't there. They do other things as well, and so they're not necessarily, they're not a producer by trade in a sense.
Mhm.
You know, Brian's a lawyer, Sandy, you know, worked in an office. So
I love that.
yeah, and so I had a lot on my shoulders as a producer doing the feature film. When I did this short film, it made me realize, and I learned that I need a good producer. I need a good co-producer, because when Mark was telling me that he can take care of things, I didn't it took me a few days to, I didn't understand what that meant, because I'm so
Oh,
used to doing
wow.
it myself. So when I had Mark being able to say, yes, I'll take care of it, and basically just, it's music to my ears. So I realized, okay, I need to make sure that I put money aside when I turn this into a feature, that I get more than one good producer, because obviously doing a feature is going to be a bigger production. So I'm going to need more than one really good producer on, and I hope Mark is available, because I'm going to hire him in a heartbeat, because he did such a great job. But yeah, I realized that I need help, and it's okay to ask for it, and it's a really great feeling when you can rely on people
Mm.
that are taking care of things, because I need that. It takes a village.
Yeah.
You know, Chris, you mentioned that, you know, you entered this contest, and it turned out that they didn't even see the film. So,
Yeah.
like, no, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I think it's
What's
hilarious.
next? I mean, what's going to happen to the film? Really, like, you know.
Yeah, so the contest, you thank God I didn't have to pay money for it, because then I'd be really pissed. But yeah, so on Vimeo you can track your views. I know for a fact they didn't look at the film.
Wow.
So I've been trying to reach out to them with no success, and to say, hey, you know, thank God, you know, thank you guys for this great opportunity, because it's a great look. Now I have a proof of concept that I can shop around. So I'm very thankful for the opportunity. But yeah, I would love for them to watch it, and if they can give me any advice, great. If not, okay, whatever. But yeah, it just goes to show you that just because you submit to something, yeah, it doesn't mean the right people are going to see it. Even with these big festivals, unfortunately, sometimes they have like PAs or whoever that might kind of give it like a half-ass look and not really give it any mind. I know a lot of festivals are like, oh no, not our festival. Well, you know, some of them, they don't really look at it,
But
unfortunately.
I love that. But I love that you have it ready to just share it with all of these festivals. I mean,
Oh
you
yeah.
did that in 2 weeks. It makes you think that I could do this again. You know?
Yeah, well, I don't want to do it under these circumstances,
I know.
but you know, but you're right. I mean, I've now submitted to a bunch of festivals, and the trick is to get into festivals is that you want to make sure that you submit early. Don't submit late.
Mm,
Because
mm.
honestly, at that point, they already have their schedule. And I'm not trying to say with my previous comment saying that festivals aren't worth it, or they don't really ever look at your stuff. They do, but you have to understand, if someone's getting 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, you know, submissions, I mean, realistically, do you really think they're going to look at your stuff unless you have some sort of unless like you submit, you know, early? Like, you have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
But thank God I have something that I can showcase, and so I'm really happy about it. But yeah, I would have rather they look at the film, but they, you know, they didn't.
I mean, I thought the film was a total success.
Yeah.
I was really, truly scared in that short of amount of time.
Yeah.
And I found it unpredictable. I didn't know what was going to happen next. So I really applaud you on that. That it
Oh, thank you.
really pulled
Yeah.
it off.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it.
There are.
Really, I love your casting. I mean, the quality. You know, when you say I could have done the apartment, or I could have done this house, you can see the production value, and I think that's really you must feel proud. You should feel proud about it.
I'm like, woo! You know, thank God. Yeah, we shot it with an Alexa. We shot it with anamorphic lenses, which are super wide lenses. I never had a production designer ever before, so like the place looked great, like as you were mentioning. Yeah, I didn't. I went into it not to save money or to be cheap. I went into it to spend money wisely, and I think that really benefited, because I think the film looks great because of it.
We only have a few minutes left, but I do want to ask you the underlying message to the movie, because there is one, and I was just wondering if you could maybe just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I could tease the audience a little bit. So basically, you know, with everything going on with conspiracy theories, it just kind of made me think as a creative person. Well, you know, just as a regular person, these conspiracy theories, unfortunately, some of them can be harmful, like Pizzagate, for instance. Some nut job went
Right.
in there with, you know, with a gun, and thank God no one was killed or hurt. So this film that I'm doing basically is showcasing my artistic view on conspiracy theories and the harm that it can create. So there is a social commentary, because I don't want to just make a slasher movie with no meaning behind it. So, but it's going to be bloody, it's going to be funny, it's going to be sexy, it's going to be all those things that you want, but it's also going to be something that I want people to go away and I want them to sort of think about things, because there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation going around. And as a creative person, I wanted to kind of say something about that, but have it wrapped up in a slasher movie.
That's what I appreciated about it, was that there was a profound message being said. It wasn't just like a Jason movie, you know?
Yeah. And it does lead you, I think, that to what you're saying, to educate. There is a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there, and just being able to tell people, open your eyes, you know?
Yeah.
That was good. Wow. Well, we've learned a lot today.
Yeah.
I had no idea that there was so much backstory behind such a risky adventure, but you pulled it off. So congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing. I think that Silo is about self-discovery, and you really have discovered so many things about what you can do with the right crew, and what you can do about trusting yourself too. So I really love listening to your story.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So what do you think, Andrea?
I think I keep saying he's amazing. I think it's so inspiring. During COVID, 2 weeks doing a shoot, low budget. It's pretty phenomenal.
Right. It got me thinking about, first of all, the movie kind of reminded me a little bit about the movie Get Out, which I love, that came out a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about how directors are inspired by other directors, within the art form. And it reminded me of, because it reminded me a little bit of Get Out, but not, directly or anything, but just slightly. It reminded me of Brian De Palma being influenced by Alfred Hitchcock, and so I thought that was kind of interesting, how art sort of is always evolving.
We're constantly being influenced by.
Yeah. Nothing is 100% original. We're all we get inspired by other artists, and then it becomes ours, and we make it something else. You see what I'm saying?
But what I like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but what I liked about his story, he's telling this story that has a lot of depth, but he's weaving it into this kind of horror thriller, which is a little bit unexpected, I would say, or maybe you might think it's expected. But I like the idea that there's a story deep into this.
Yes, it has layers.
Of where we are right now in the world.
Psychological. It makes you think. It's not just a slasher film by any means.
Yeah, as he said, he didn't want to just do a slasher. And what I really admired about him is his ability to say, I really feel that I learn about myself, that I need to delegate, I need to hire the right people. And just the fact that he said that, you know how you're always doing everything, you're just spinning all the wheels. He found that, my God, by delegating to all these professional people who what they do, he could do his job. But and that really is I admire about him, because all of us don't delegate.
Living into that it was going to happen. That was what was incredible too.
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts, and yet he had a vision that this is going to happen no matter what. And that takes a lot of guts.
It does.
I don't know if I could do it, but the movie also got me thinking about the people that are attracted to horror movies. And I started wondering, is there a certain psychology that comes behind people that are attracted to horror movies? Are they drawn to a visual like that just shakes them up and makes them feel?
I wonder. I don't watch a lot of horrors. But
I'd like to, it just makes me wonder. I'm not saying I'm right, but it had me wondering if that could be an element that some people just don't they're not as much in touch with their feelings necessarily. So this is a way for them to feel something.
Yeah, it's the extreme, like seeing someone getting killed and slashed like that. Like
you get a reaction, force you to get a reaction. I don't, I'm very much in touch with my feelings, so I don't necessarily gravitate towards that, but it just had me thinking, and I don't know, something.
Yeah, but the fact that he's living into his dream, and I think that sometimes deadlines put us on that track where if you're forced to have to do something in a certain time period, people work better through pressure, and some people don't. So that was it's interesting to hear his perspective on how he was able to execute produce a film in that short time.
Successful. Yeah, so we did a good job. I enjoyed it. All right.
But we have to thank our executive producer, Mark Izowski, and Rebecca Gallagher for their help on this podcast and, all the episodes previous to this, because it's a lot of work. It takes a village.
We had no idea when we were starting.
It takes a village.
So I think we're good. Let's call it a day.
Well, have a good evening.
All right, you too.
Okay. Bye.